I'm going to tell you a story you've never heard before because no one knows this story the way I do. It takes place the night of June 12, 1994. Dead in Hollywood.
Park in the alley.
Yeah, and I would go in the alley.
Right. You put on a wool cap and gloves.
In the hypothetical, I put on a cap and gloves.
Right.
Yeah.
And you reached under the seat for?
A knife. I always kept a knife in the hot car for the crazies and stuff because you can't travel with a gun.
He's back. Please.
Well, okay, what does he look like?
He's OJ Simpson. I think you know his record. Could you just take somebody over here?
Okay, what is he doing there?
June 12, 1994 was a relatively quiet Sunday in the Los Angeles neighborhood of Brentwood. The most memorable event of that day wouldn't happen until that evening when the bodies of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were discovered. 5 days later, former football star Nicole's ex-husband, OJ Simpson, was charged with the killings.
Who has been a fugitive from justice now almost 12 hours.
After the murders, the Bronco chase, and the trials, everything changed. The way we watch the news, talk about race, and view celebrities. And America was never quite the same. And this is where it all happened. Back in 1994, Brentwood itself became a character in the OJ Simpson saga. Let's go behind the sign.
It's been home to likes of Marilyn Monroe, Steve McQueen, and Jim Carrey. It's full of luxury shops and A-list brunch spots. This is Brentwood. Peaceful, tree-lined streets have been a respite for the rich and famous since early Hollywood days. Affluent professionals, political figures, and A-listers have made Brentwood their home and haven. It's low-key, but upscale.
You get this? You getting this? That's why they call me Juice, right here. Yeah. I'm why they call me Juice. I can't take credit. It's God-given.
Can I kiss your hand?
On the morning of June 12th, OJ Simpson played a round of golf here at the Riviera Country Club in Pacific Palisades. The Hall of Famer and his buddy, TV producer Craig Baumgarten, got into a fight, almost coming to blows on the second hole.
But off the record, come on, you can level with me.
Take care.
On the right in a second, you'll see the Brentwood Country Mart where OJ would go and drink coffee and read the paper in the morning before going to play golf.
Nicole spent the morning shopping for toys for her children, Sydney and Justin. She then went to a florist and bought flowers for Sydney's recital later that evening. The recital took place at Paul Revere Middle School. It'd be a family affair with Nicole's family and OJ both in attendance. Nicole shared custody of Sydney and Justin with her ex-husband, and it seemed to work.
Justin.
Everyone agrees that Nicole was a very good mom. At the time of their mother's death, Sydney was 8 and Justin was a few weeks shy of turning 6.
This year my family is here joining me, and right now standing here is my son Justin Ryan. Say happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving!
Ron Goldman spent the morning playing softball here at Barrington Park. He would then drive the short distance home to change for work.
We don't get to spend very much time together, so I'm very glad that I was able to be here and spend this time with you, because God knows where I'll be in a year.
Nicole and Ron had less than 12 hours to live.
Being live is what it's all about, game day, you know? So in a sense, you get the sense that it's game day for whatever that performance is, which means anything can happen. Yeah, speaking of that lady I was talking about.
Yes, she is.
With another shot of this tequila. Now watch her, I'm ready. So watch her sing. Well, sing. She can sing some.
That's mine.
We're alive right now, all across America. That she is my woman. She is my woman.
Hey everybody, I'm Adam. I'm a huge fan of the OJ Simpson murder trial, which I realize is a weird way to put it. I grew up in Brentwood, and I've been obsessed with the trial my entire life. Find out more about the OJ Tour by visiting theojtour.com. Thanks, and remember, don't squeeze the juice.
I'm about to take the OJ Simpson tour with tour guide Adam Papagan in the same make and model of the white Bronco OJ owned at the time of the murder. Come on.
Only one vehicle for a tour like this, a white Ford Bronco. Welcome to West LA, welcome to the 1990s. So I say that this tour is not about the how or the why, because you're probably already at least a little familiar with this story. I mean, it was on TV all day long as it was happening. This is literally the most publicized event in human history. Also, this time period, there's a ton of these celebrity scandal news stories. You have not only OJ, but you have Bill Clinton, Princess Diana, Hugh Grant, Eddie Murphy, the Menendez brothers, John Benet Ramsey, Mary Kay Letourneau, Anna Nicole Smith, Tanya Harding. The list goes on and on. And this is when news was going from something you report on to something you just sort of talk about all day to sell commercials. So this was just like the granddaddy of all those stories. We'll do a Q&A at the end if there's anything I don't cover, but if you've ever watched one of those documentaries and been like, wow, this is so crazy, well, you're in one now. So here's our next stop on the right. So we're on Rockingham right now. This is the street OJ lived on. This next block, the 300 block, was his block.
I'm standing in front of what used to be OJ Simpson's Rockingham estate. It was torn down in 1998. Rockingham was OJ's Graceland.
Now this is the Rockingham gate to my home.
Some of you might remember it from the end of the low-speed Bronco chase when OJ surrendered to the police here at his home.
Again, here is OJ Simpson. Yes, indeed, it would appear that he is in fact trying to reach his neighborhood, if you will.
And you see people chasing after the Bronco.
Because all the news vans are lined up and all the supporters are outside with their signs, "Go OJ Go," which was of course the tagline for the Hertz commercials.
And so he offered to let you stay at his house on Rockingham, is that?
Yes.
And what was your arrangement with the defendant concerning what kind of rent you'd be paying him to stay at his place on Rockingham?
I offered rent and OJ said he didn't want my money.
At 2 p.m. on June 12th, OJ's house guest, Cato Kalin, saw OJ in the kitchen on a phone call with his girlfriend, Paula Barbereri. Paula was a model and actress known for her roles in erotic dramas and for her 1994 Playboy pictorial. The couple got into an argument over Paula wanting to attend Sydney's recital that evening, but since Nicole was going to be there, OJ didn't want Paula there. OJ and Nicole were divorced at this point, but OJ was still hoping to win back his ex-wife.
I, OJ, take you, Nicole.
I, OJ, take you.
To be my wedded wife.
To be my wedded wife.
And I do promise and covenant.
And I do promise and covenant.
Before God and these witnesses.
Before God and these witnesses.
To be your loving and faithful husband.
To be your loving and faithful husband.
A year earlier on Mother's Day, 1993, OJ and Nicole had decided to give their relationship another try. By the following Mother's Day, Nicole ended things with OJ once and for all. Keep in mind, this was only a few weeks before the murders. Sensing that OJ wasn't over his ex-wife, Paula broke up with him hours before the murders on his answering machine. Later that day, Paula flew to Las Vegas to be with her ex, singer Michael Bolton. Yes, that Michael Bolton. And you know that must have driven OJ crazy. It might not seem like it now, but Michael Bolton had this hold over women in the 1990s. Paula ended up testifying at the civil trial that she had been frightened by OJ's temper.
Is that a threat, fat boy?
No, he doesn't like it when you're disrespectful.
Well, you can tell Tito he can kiss my ass.
Paula is now a born-again Christian living in Panama City, Florida, and married to a judge known for his work on domestic abuse cases. At 4 p.m. before leaving for the recital, OJ stopped by his guest house to ask Cato to set him up on a date for the following Tuesday. Nothing says I'm over my ex like rebounding an hour later. OJ was a ticking time bomb by this point. First, the fight on the golf course, and now his girlfriend was breaking up with him to go be with a white soul singer. It was all too much for his ego to take. OJ was not having a great day, and Paula's rejection was just the opening act.
And OJ Nicole's daughter Sydney has a dance recital at Paul Revere Middle School, which is going to be coming up on our right in just a second. Nicole's whole family comes up from Orange County, her parents and her sisters and everybody. They go into the auditorium here for the recital, so it's the big kind of two-story building. Over 30 acts performed in the dance recital that day, so they were here for like 4 hours.
OJ arrived for the recital around 4:45, and he sat behind Nicole and the Browns. Denise Brown, Nicole's sister, would testify at the trial that OJ just sat there glaring at Nicole the entire time.
He had a very bizarre look in his eyes. It was actually really kind of spooky. It just didn't look like the OJ that we knew. So every time I turned around, he was staring at Nicole.
afterwards, it was a completely different story. OJ was in good spirits. He was laughing and talking with the Browns, and he even kissed him goodbye before leaving.
But it's finally over. Everyone comes outside. The Brown family is standing right by this tree right here, and OJ comes up to the family and he says hello and offers to take everyone out to a big fancy dinner like he had so many times before. But Nicole's sort of mad at him at the time. She stands up to him. She's like, you know what, OJ, we're gonna go just the family. All their friends are here. They see this go down, so he's sort of embarrassed. They all go off to dinner, and OJ is left here sulking. And many people speculate that realizing he's lost Nicole once and for all was what set OJ off on the murderous events of that night.
Underneath that seemingly cool exterior, OJ was seething. When he returned home to the Rockingham estate between 6:30 and 7 p.m., he complained to Cato that he was angry that Nicole was wearing a tight-fitting dress and that she didn't allow him to go to dinner afterwards.
Had you and your parents and your sister planned to go somewhere after the recital was over?
Yes, we did. We were going out to dinner.
Okay. And where were you planning to go?
We were going to Mezzaluna restaurant.
Mezzaluna place. It was a happening night.
Mezzaluna was a favorite of Nicole's. It was a regular dinner spot for her and OJ even after they broke up. Leonard Nimoy, Spock from Star Trek, was seated next to Nicole and her family on the night of the murders. Nimoy had wondered who that beautiful blonde woman was at the next table. He asked the waiter, who told him it was OJ Simpson's ex-wife Nicole. The next day, Nimoy was reading about the murders in the paper when he realized that his waiter had been Ron Goldman. Nicole's friend Ron Goldman worked here at Mezzaluna as a server. When Nicole and her family showed up for dinner after the recital, Ron asked one of the other servers to switch sections with him because he didn't like waiting on his friends.
Across the street on the left, next block, there's a Starbucks, one of the first Starbucks in the area. And that's where Nicole and her friend Faye Resnick would hang out and drink frappuccinos, and where they met a group of good-looking young guys who hung around the Starbucks, who they called the Starbucks Boys. And in that group was a young waiter who also lived in Brentwood by the name of Ron Goldman. So Ron was from the Midwest originally.
One of the forgotten victims in this tragedy, Ron Goldman.
Me is Ron Goldman, a 23-year-old tennis pro. Give him a big hand for coming down here. He did appear on the dating show Studs. Very creepy because you only ever hear about Ron in this one context as a murder victim. But then in this clip, they're like, all right, here's our next contestant, Ron Goldman. And you just like shiver when you see it. One of the other contestants compares him to Pauly Shore.
Uh-oh.
No, come on. Say it right.
Got a date with Pauly Shore.
He ends up winning the date with the girl on the show. They kiss when the credits are rolling. A little forward by today's standards, but you just get the impression from this clip that this is just some guy. Like some random guy living in West LA, going on reality shows.
Ron grew up in Buffalo Grove, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. His father, Fred Goldman, raised him and his sister as a single parent. Ron dropped out of college after a year and moved to Los Angeles where his family had relocated. He took a number of odd jobs as he tried to find himself. He worked as a tennis instructor and a waiter.
Friends remember Ron as the life of the party. His playful nature is captured in this innocent game of truth or dare.
I love
Mezzaluna closed its doors in July of 1997. It was a Pete's Coffee for a while, and now it's a lamp store. Nicole's last meal was the rigatoni, which you can still order at the last surviving Mezzaluna, which is in New York City.
What did you do after dinner was over?
And we kissed each other goodbye. The last thing I told her was that I loved her.
After dinner, Nicole took the kids to get ice cream here at Ben & Jerry's, which is now a Fresh Brothers. At the same time Nicole was at Ben & Jerry's, OJ was at this McDonald's with Cato.
You invited yourself to go with him?
Yes.
And what was his response to that?
Sure.
You seem real excited to have you come?
Sustained. Wouldn't you?
So OJ Simpson and Cato Kalin took OJ's Bentley through this drive-thru at 9:25 p.m. and Cato paid for their meal because OJ only had $100 bills on him, and OJ though ended up pocketing the change. He had a late night flight to Chicago later that evening and needed the change to tip the sky cap. Why can I do that? Okay, so he could tip the sky cap. Damn it, and he needed the change to tip the fucking sky cap. I think OJ wanted to use McDonald's as his alibi because of the timestamp that would be on the receipt when he got his meal.
Somehow I heard there's no alibi. I said, I never have an alibi. When has Cato ever known
In the 5 or 6 months that he lived here, I guess Cato could tell you maybe twice he saw me after 8:30.
He had no idea that Cato was going to invite himself along for the ride. And Cato liked being around celebrities and famous people, and he was excited when, OJ came into his room asking him for some change, and of course he was going to jump at the opportunity to come with OJ. OJ Simpson. We have to remember, OJ Simpson, like men of a certain age, really means a lot to them.
Oh, there's OJ! There's OJ! What the fuck do you think we're talking about, Mark?
Back in the day, it was unusual for white men to worship a black man, but OJ made it easy for white people to like him. He used to tell his friends, "I'm not black, I'm OJ." Do you have change for 100?
Yeah. Change for 100?
The alibi falls apart.
Hello?
At 9:45, Nicole made a phone call to Mezzaluna and spoke with Ron.
You make a good impression on the phone with a woman?
I guess so. I don't like to talk a lot on the phone, so I'm kind of blunt to the point. Let's get it going.
Her mother had accidentally left her glasses behind. The gold-rimmed glasses were found in front of the restaurant in the gutter right around here. Ron happily agreed to bring the glasses to Nicole and pop them in an envelope before leaving Mezzaluna.
It was an act that would cost Ron Goldman his life.
The glasses would ultimately be discovered still in the envelope next to Ron's body.
But this was the building right here on the right, Ron's apartment building. It was unit 3, so it was around the side. But if you look at this front unit here, you can see mismatched furniture, no art on the wall, total bachelor pad, right? That's what I'm sure the vibe of Ron's apartment would have been like. He didn't have a lot of money because he just lived alone. He didn't own a car because he could just walk to work. But at the time of the murders, he was borrowing a car from a friend of his who was out of town. It was a green Geo Metro. It was parked right here where this Lexus is.
So before going over to Nicole's, Ron came back to his apartment here to change and freshen up. It's up for debate on whether or not Nicole and Ron were just friends or if there was something more going on. The first police officer to arrive at Nicole's condo noticed that there were candles lit in the bedroom, the bathtub was full, the TV was on, and the kids were asleep. It seemed like maybe he wasn't just dropping off the sunglasses.
A few times Ron was seen driving Nicole's white Ferrari up and down San Vicente. So even if they weren't together officially, how many white Ferraris are there out there? And in fact, the type of Ferrari Nicole had, only 7 were made in the color white ever, the entire time it was in production. So I'm sure that information got back to OJ. Hey Juice, I saw that waiter driving your girl's car again. What's up with that? But
Ron headed off to Nicole's a little after 10 p.m. Nicole's condo was only 6 blocks from Ron's. At best, a 5-minute drive through Brentwood's palm tree-lined streets. How could Ron have possibly guessed that his simple act of kindness would backfire so spectacularly that it would result in his gruesome death at the age of 25? By this point in the drive, Ron had minutes to live.
None of you media people talk about this.
You can honestly sit here and tell the American public that only one time you got into a physical altercation, and
only one time that I physically try to force my will on Nicole Simpson. One time only.
All right, we have to take a break. We're with OJ Simpson. We're live in Los Angeles, up close. We'll continue in a moment. Don't go away.
So much to talk about. There's so many questions in this case. Your time between 9:36 and the evening of the murders and 10:53. It's time that the prosecution says is unaccounted for.
When does a man have to be held accountable for where he's at? When he's in his bedroom, when he's in his home.
Well, when he's a suspect for murder, that's what the prosecution says. We want to know where you were during that time.
Well, if they would have, when they asked me, I answered all the police questions about where I was that night. Basically, I was home. To me, once I get to 360 North Rockingham, when you come inside of those gates, I'm at home.
You were here during that time?
I was here during that time.
So the time that the prosecution claims generally that Nicole and Ron Goldman were murdered, you were here in this house?
Where I am the majority of the time, basically alone, all the time. So, I mean, somehow I heard there's no alibi. I said, I never have an alibi. When do you have to be held accountable for being in your bedroom, for being in your own home?
In Investigators placed the time of death around 10:15 when neighbors heard a dog barking.
Sounded like a, very unhappy animal.
Pablo Fineves, who testifies during the trial that he heard the plaintive wail of a dog. That was the term he used, plaintive wail. The defense was able to dig up an unproduced screenplay he had written where he uses that same phrase, plaintive wail of a dog. So they're like, he just made this whole thing up. But many years later, Pablo gets a side gig ghostwriting celebrity autobiographies, and he's the one who ghostwrote OJ's hypothetical confession, "If I Did It." So another one of these weird kind of coincidences.
Just after midnight, Nicole's dog, a white Akita named Cato, was found wandering around the neighborhood all on its own with bloody paw prints. The Akita eventually led that neighbor back to the bodies of Nicole and Ron, who were just outside of her condo. This is now the entrance to the condo, but it's changed over the years. The actual entrance back in the day used to be right over here, to the right of this palm tree, right here. So their bodies would have been found just on the other side of this wall. Their bodies lay in a narrow passageway between Nicole's front steps and the front gate. The murders were incredibly violent, bloody, and swift. The medical examiner's report noted that the wounds were consistent with an attack by a strong, large man, a description that clearly fits OJ.
Stay on the line, you're gonna beat the shit. Wait a minute, wait, just stay on the line.
Hey, look, I grabbed her. I had her in a headlock. I wrestled her. She was pushing me. I was pushing her. I literally physically removed her from the bedroom. Whatever bruises she got on her, whatever they are, I was responsible for. It's my fault. I am wrong. Court, do whatever you want to do to me. What more do you want me to do? And why are we talking about it now?
Don't you think it...
I feel it'll be the same outcome this year.
OJ was forceful with Nicole from the very first date, sending her home to a roommate with ripped jeans.
I think she got home at 2 o'clock. Then all of a sudden I looked and her pants had been ripped, and I said, well, what happened? She said, well, he just was a little forceful and he ripped my pants. I said, you're kidding, why would you let him do that? I was kind of upset, and I said, I want to talk to him, I want to, and she goes, no, I think I like him.
For Nicole, it was love at first sight. Nicole, then 18 and fresh out of high school, landed a job as a waitress at the Daisy, a private Beverly Hills club. On her very first shift, Nicole caught the eye of OJ. 2 days after their first date, OJ wanted to buy Nicole an apartment and a car.
He said to her, I don't want you living with anybody. He seemed possessive, but not too overwhelming at that time. Later on, he seemed like he was more and more possessive and more jealous.
I was having problems in my marriage, and I was married to a very good person.
OJ started dating Nicole while he was still married to his first wife, Marguerite, who was pregnant with their daughter. Sadly, that little girl wouldn't make it to her second birthday. OJ's 23-month-old daughter drowned at the pool here at Rockingham. He got rid of that memory by getting rid of his first wife, Marguerite. OJ divorced Marguerite, and not long after, he married Nicole in a backyard wedding next to the very pool his daughter drowned in.
It's funny because I'm just so excited. It's really weird.
The marriage between Nicole and OJ lasted 7 tempestuous years. The pair fought constantly. OJ was controlling and abusive.
I don't understand why we're still talking about
But
this.
would it have helped? I mean, you say responsible. Would it have helped to say, yes, I hit her, I beat her?
Why would it help to say something that didn't happen?
Well, because
I was responsible for it.
It's been suggested that OJ's years of abuse towards Nicole stemmed, at least in part, from his relationship with his father. Jimmy Lee Simpson abandoned his family when OJ was only 4. OJ resented his father's absence. It took him years to come to terms with his feelings, if he ever did. On top of that, OJ's father was gay. Like Marvin Gaye's dad, OJ's dad liked to dress in women's clothing, embarrassing OJ whenever OJ brought friends over to his father's house. Growing up with a single mom, the kids in the neighborhood tormented OJ with the nickname Mama's Boy. OJ's desire to dominate and devour women to prove his own hyper-hetero masculinity was born out of an internalized homophobia.
My woman.
OJ was known to be very homophobic back in the day. At the murder trial, Nicole's diary was read, including an entry from 1988 when the family vacationed in Hawaii. A gay man had kissed his 3-year-old son Justin at a restaurant on New Year's Eve. After the Hawaii trip, Nicole asked one of OJ's friends if he thought OJ had freaked out about the gay man because his own father was gay. OJ's father died of AIDS in 1986. Nicole suffered unspeakable physical, emotional, and sexual abuse at the hands of OJ. She repeatedly called police for protection from OJ's brutal rampages, and over the years, OJ was only arrested once. He basically got off with a warning.
New Year's 1989.
On New Year's Eve 1989, Nicole called 911 for the 9th time. OJ had beaten her so badly that when the police officer pulled up to the house, he found her cowering in some bushes, barely clothed and bruised all over her body. When he asked her what was going on, she told him that he was going to kill her. The officer asked who, and she said, "My husband, OJ Simpson."
And I threw her out, and I really threw her out with no concern for her well-being. The one thing that hurts me as much as anything in this, besides being considered by some a murderer, is being a batterer.
OJ managed to escape that night by driving out of this gate. You see, the police and Nicole were over at the main gate, and the officer literally watched OJ speed off.
Car 54, where are you?
This is the Gretna greenhouse that the Simpsons bought after their first separation, and Nicole moved into before moving over to the Bundy condo. On October 25th, 1993, less than a year before the murders, Nicole made 2 frantic calls to 911. OJ had showed up unannounced and bashed in the back door. He was in a rage that she was seeing the manager, Mezzaluna, which makes you wonder if Mezzaluna never existed, maybe Nicole and Ron would still be alive. And if you haven't heard the 911 tapes, they are truly chilling.
Emergency. Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Please. Well, okay, what does he look like? He's OJ Simpson. I think you know his record. He's in a white Bronco, but first of all, he broke the back door down to get in. Okay, wait a minute. What's your name? Nicole Simpson. Oh, wait a minute. We're sending the police. What is he doing? Is he threatening you? He's going nuts. You're going to hear him in a minute. He's about to go in. Okay, just stay on the line. I don't want to stay on the line. He's going to beat the shit. Wait a minute. What does he say? Go too high. It's been 422, 130, 825 children involved. Is he upset with something that you did? A long time ago. It always comes back.
Incidentally, the only time you hear Nicole's perspective during any of this is that one phone call. This is also where, and this is one of these tabloid kind of stories, but apparently Nicole's on a date with her new boyfriend, Keith Zlumzowicz, also manager of the Mezzaluna restaurant, actually. And as the story goes, Nicole performs oral sex on Keith in the living room right there, with the knowledge that OJ was in the bushes spying on them. He'd always been unfaithful during their marriage, so she wanted to get back at him a little bit, make him angry.
This wasn't the first time OJ showed up unannounced at Nicole's place, and it sure wasn't going to be the last time. After Gretna Green sold, Nicole moved into the Bundy condo. Bundy offered a little bit more security for Nicole, or, so she thought.
So here's the game plan, and it's pretty simple.
As shocking as it sounds, in 2007, OJ co-wrote the book If I Did It, where he basically confessed to killing Nicole and Ron.
I always feel that the truth will set you free.
In the book, he gives a hypothetical description of the murders, and if you can believe it, he gives himself an accomplice named Charlie. You see, according to OJ, Charlie's the one who committed the murders. OJ just went along to scare Nicole straight.
He has a couple hours till he has to take this flight to Chicago, but he thinks he has enough time, so he gets in his Bronco, comes down here, drives past the front of the house, doesn't see anything going on, and pulls around to the back, goes to the side gate, which he knew was broken because he came over here all the time. So whether he came over just to spy on Nicole, maybe slash her tires, scare her a little bit, we know that he did stuff like that.
The book was a self-portrait of a wife abuser who somehow worked himself up into thinking he was the victim and Nicole was the one on the fast track to hell.
As you sit here today, do you still think you're a battered husband or were a battered husband, battered boyfriend?
In reality, it was OJ who was losing control.
They call me Juice, the Juice.
You take Prozac?
No, I don't take any of those type of.
Nothing to be ashamed of.
I don't take any mood on my vitamin E, so I can be ready when that time comes when some girl says, "Hey, Juice, take me."
OJ did an interview to publicize the book, but it was ultimately shelved and it wasn't released until 2017 when it aired in a Fox special on the murders.
I'm going to tell you a story you've never heard before because no one knows this story the way I know it. It takes place the night of June 12, 1994, and it concerns the murders of my ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her young friend, Ronald Goldman. Keep this in mind. This is hypothetical.
In the interview, he goes into great detail about the night of the murders.
I can go on and on.
He reveals himself to be the killer with every answer.
What might have happened on the night of June 12th, 1994. And let's just walk through the night.
Well, first of all, this is very difficult for me to do this. In the book, the hypothetical is...
Charlie, pulls that up.
Charlie.
I know it sounds silly, it sounds a little stupid, but it works for me.
I don't know why you had been by Nicole's house, but it told me you wouldn't believe what's going on over there. And I remember thinking, well, whatever's going on over there has got to stop. You know, I'm kind of broad stroking this. We go over, get in the Bronco and go over.
You park
in the hypothetical, go in the alley.
He just can't get Nicole off of his mind. She was apparently wearing a short skirt at the recital, so he's thinking, oh, I bet she has a guy over there, she has a date. I warned her about doing stuff like that when the kids are home. I'm gonna go see what she's up to.
OJ parked his Bronco here in the alley behind Nicole's condo. OJ retrieved his knife from the Bronco that he kept to ward off the crazies, and he put on a wool cap and his famously ill-fitting gloves.
It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
He then let himself in through this gate and made his way to the front of Nicole's condo.
I go to the front and I'm looking to see what's going on, and I can see that it appears like Nicole had candles all the time. She really did, to keep her overhead down, I think. And music was on.
Remember, OJ did the exact same thing at Gretna Green when he was spying on Nicole, hooking up with the manager of Mezzaluna. So you know he was seeing red when he sees this good-looking waiter from Mezzaluna show up on Nicole's doorstep.
While I was there, a guy shows up. In the mood I was in, I started having words with him.
He says to you, I just came by to return a pair of glasses. Judy left them at the restaurant.
Yeah, words to that effect, yes.
OJ then accused Ron of selling drugs to Nicole. During the trial of the century, the defense team put forth an alternate theory claiming that Colombian drug dealers murdered Nicole and Ron, and that Mezzaluna was a nexus for drug trafficking in Brentwood. Evidence was presented at the criminal trial that Nicole's wound on her neck was a Colombian necktie, a form of mutilation in which the victim's tongue is pulled through a deep cut beneath the jaw and left dangling on the neck, a calling card often employed by Colombian drug dealers. Ron's friend, record label executive Brett Cantor, was murdered in a similar fashion a year earlier. Brett was part owner of the Dragonfly nightclub here on Santa Monica Boulevard, where Ron was a waiter and Nicole frequently visited.
Is it weird finding that out, that there's other murders?
It is strange that there were a number of other unsolved murders that all involved Mezzaluna, which adds credence to the theory that Mezzaluna was a drug front. After leaving the club on July 30th, 1993, Britt was found murdered in his apartment here on North Vista Street in Hollywood. Brett was stabbed 23 times. Like Nicole, his throat had been cut almost to the point of decapitation, and his body would be found near his open front door. Nothing in his apartment had been touched, and his case remains unsolved to this day. On September 8th, 1995, a year after the double murders, aspiring actor Michael Nigg was shot and killed in this parking lot. Michael worked at Mezzaluna alongside Ron, and even dated Ron's sister, Kim Goldman, in 1992. Less than a month before OJ was found not guilty, Michael was murdered. And to date, his killers have never been caught, and the crime remains unsolved.
Okay, based on your experience, sir, and training, in your opinion, was the murder of Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown a drug-related murder?
Both defense and prosecution in the criminal case evaluated these tenuously linked incidents and rejected them, either because the witnesses were not credible or the connections were mere coincidences. So whether or not OJ believed that Ron was a drug dealer is pure speculation. I think it can be surmised that OJ was not thrilled when Ron showed up at Nicole's that night.
And here comes Ron with the glasses.
Got a little loud, and by that time, Nicole had come out, and we started having words about who is this guy, why is he here, what's going on.
And she says, this is my house, get the F out of here.
Which I didn't like.
By this point, Nicole ordered OJ to leave, but he refused.
Things got heated. I just remember Nicole fell and hurt herself.
Let's be real, he struck her, sending her to the ground like he did on multiple occasions.
Charlie took the knife?
Yeah. And this guy kind of got into a karate thing. And I said, well, you think you can kick my ass? And I remember I grabbed a knife. I do remember that portion, taking the knife from Charlie. And to be honest, after that, I don't remember. Except I'm standing there and there's all kind of stuff around. And
What kind of stuff?
Blood and stuff around.
Jesus, Juice.
I hate to say this, but this is hypothetical. I'm sorry. I know we got to back up again.
Right. I want to back up.
This is hard. This is
hard.
Yeah,
I know. I want to back up
hard
to
try to make people think that I'm.
I know. You wrote in the book, I had never seen so much blood in my life.
During the interview, he totally glosses over the actual murders, but he does admit to holding the knife before blacking out.
You ever blacked out before?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
No. Of course, if something like this would take place in anybody's life, if it were to happen, I would imagine it's something that you would probably automatically have trouble wrapping your mind around it. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible.
OJ conveniently leaves out the most disturbing aspects of the killings.
But we're going to make it as painless as possible.
With the kids fast asleep upstairs, Nicole and Ron lay dead just behind this wall. And the murders were brutal. Nicole was stabbed 12 times and she was almost decapitated. Ron was stabbed 25 times. Nicole was laying face down and barefoot at the bottom of the stairs. The front door was open, but there was no signs that anyone entered the condo. Nicole and OJ's kids, Sydney and Justin, slept upstairs. If OJ did do it, he did it knowing that his children might find their mom's dead body. The walkway leading to the stairs was covered in blood, but the soles of Nicole's feet were clean, which led investigators to conclude that she was the first to be killed. Nicole had been stabbed multiple times in the head and the neck. There were only a few defensive wounds on her hands, implying a short struggle.
At this point, Mr. Goldman comes up to the gate, punches it, and rings the doorbell. Nicole Simpson leaves her condo, and she actually leaves the front door ajar to come down and open the gate. Literally, the assailant has to come from the patio area, or the physical arrangements of the subjects make no sense. Soon thereafter, we believe the assailant hits Nicole Simpson on the left side of her face with the butt of his knife, the pommel. And that knocks her right side of her head into the wall. We believe that knocks her out, which enables the assailant now to come down and deal with the number one threat, which is the young, able, and in pretty good shape Mr. Goldman.
Okay, obviously this is your older brother. We don't get to spend very much time together, so I'm very glad that I was able to be here and spend this time with you, because God knows where I'll be in a year.
Ron's body lay near Nicole's, close to a tree and the fence. He'd been stabbed multiple times in the body and neck, but like Nicole, there were relatively few defensive wounds on his hands, signifying another short struggle.
It's obvious from the medical evidence that the assailant has a hand over Mr. Goldman's mouth, is having a talk with Mr. Goldman, and is emphasizing his points with the knife. We postulate he falls away into the fence. We see abrasion marks down the back of his scalp, which we believe is a result of falling down the fence. And then he falls over, and that is literally the position he is found by the police the next morning. With Mr. Goldman dealt with, the assailant is now free to turn his attention to Nicole.
The final wound inflicted upon Nicole ran deep into her neck. She also had a footprint on her back that led investigators to surmise that after killing Ron, the assailant returned to Nicole's body, stood on her back, pulled her head back by the hair, and slit her throat.
It's clear again that the assailant is talking to Nicole Simpson. There are 3 other small cuts on her throat, parallel to where the fatal blow is going to be administered. It's clearly, again, torture. The final cut across her throat. The strength in that cut is enormous. She is going to receive a single slice to the front of the throat that is going to be so deep it is going to nick her spinal cord.
Nicole's larynx could be seen through the wound in her neck.
Get all that energy exploding out of me.
Next to Ron's body was the wool cap and a left-handed, extra-large isotoner glove. The right-hand glove was found at Rockingham.
I had to realize that Juice, you gotta be a lot smarter about what you eat.
OJ made his escape back down this alley, leaving behind a trail of bloody size 12 shoe prints. Investigators measured the distance between the prints and concluded that he must have walked away. He didn't run away from the crime scene. He casually walked back to the Bronco.
Especially when a guy have a bad knee like I have,
Yeah,
huh?
you got it.
I used to walk on the wild side. Now, I just take a brisk walk.
He also left blood splatter on this gate and bloody change on the ground. It's assumed that's the change he was handed at the McDonald's drive-thru. OJ sped away in the cover of night. It's like a 7-minute drive from Nicole's back to Rockingham. While fleeing the crime scene, OJ almost crashed into another car.
As OJ's on his way back home, there's a woman heading in the opposite direction down San Vicente named Jill Shively, who's on her way to the grocery store down the street to get soup from the salad bar because she had a cold. She knew that the market closed at 11. It was right before 11, so she could kind of remember what time it was, but she's minding her own business, you know, just driving down the street, and OJ runs through the intersection, and they almost get in a head-on collision. And they stop and they make eye contact. And OJ was known for being very approachable. He'd always pose for pictures and sign autographs and stuff. So I think when he gets recognized, his celebrity instincts kick in, and he's like, oh, I gotta say something to this lady. So he leans out the window and he's like, hey, get out of the way. And Jill's like, huh, that's weird. She's kind of shaken up. She gets home. According to her, she calls the police. Again, no police report or anything, but she calls the police and she's like, hey, I almost just got in a car accident with OJ Simpson. I think he was drunk driving or something. Just thought you guys should know about it. So she talks to the lawyers. She's all set to testify. But before the trial even starts, she sells her story to the tabloid TV show Hard Copy for $5,000.
Tonight on Hard Copy. Back in 1994, Shively testified before the grand jury, but she was never called as a witness in the murder trial because she sold her story to a TV show for $5,000.
He was really like a madman gone mad, insane.
Marcia Clark, the prosecuting attorney, is furious. She's like, okay, we can't put this lady on the stand. They're going to think she has made this whole thing up to make a couple bucks and get on TV.
And she said, I remember this, you blew my case. It was that, over and over. And I never forgot it. I felt horrible.
OJ was scheduled to board a red-eye flight from LAX to Chicago to play golf the next day. OJ's limo driver arrived early, around 10:25, and he drove around the neighborhood to make sure he could navigate the area with the stretched limo. He didn't notice OJ's Bronco parked in front of the house, suggesting it wasn't there when OJ said he was at home sleeping. The limo driver buzzed the intercom at 10:40 and got no response.
When OJ pulls up a little while later, he sees the limo waiting for him, so he's got to ditch the Bronco. So he parks in front of where the numbers are painted, which means he arrived after the limo driver did. He's parked on the outside of the gate. All the other cars are on the inside of the gate, so that's kind of suspicious. He's parked at an angle, so it looks like he's parked in a hurry. And of course, there's blood on the car and in the car, so he's got to ditch the Bronco. So he parks in front of the house here, runs over to this side of the property. You can actually kind of see where the bushes aren't as grown in. The fence is a little taller. That's because that part was added when they built the new house. Originally, there was a pathway between the two houses. He runs along the path to his property, jumps over the wall to his place. In the confusion, he drops the other leather glove he's carrying, bangs into Cato's air conditioner, shakes the whole guest house. Cato thought there was an earthquake or something.
Here we have this air conditioning unit, which we've heard a lot about. This was a unit that Cato Kalin heard 3 loud thumps from. 3 loud bumps, sort of like that. I don't know what that could have been. Maybe it was a signal. I have no idea, but he never. Now let's take a good look at this air conditioning unit. Right down here, about 4 or 5 feet from this unit is where they found, or where they claim to have found, the glove.
OJ goes around to the back door and realizes that the alarm is on, so he has to come around to the front, and this is when the limo driver sees a shadowy figure across the yard.
Who was the shadowy figure that came across the driveway?
Soon after this, Cato came out of the guest house to investigate the loud thuds, and he sees the limo parked outside the gate and buzzes it in.
He thought we had an earthquake. He talked about a picture moving on his wall, that he heard some thumps, and that he wanted a flashlight so he can to go check it out.
As I walk down my driveway, as you can see, it's easy to see me. Alan Park testified on the stand that he had a view from the end of my garage right up here, actually to the front of my house. Now let's go inside.
A few minutes later, an out-of-breath OJ came out of the house, claiming that
he overslept, he just got out of the shower, and he'd be down in a minute.
Both Cato and the limo driver would testify that OJ seemed agitated.
On the way to the airport, did the defendant say anything to you?
Yeah, a few times he repeated how hot he was. 2 or 3 times he said, man, it's hot.
It was not a warm night by any means. The limo driver also testified that Simpson loaded 4 bags into the limo and wouldn't let him touch any of them.
It was another, seemed to be small duffel bag. Cato offered to go get the bag. He said, no, that's okay, I'll get it.
What was in the black bag?
golf balls, usable golf balls, and a windbreaker.
At LAX, OJ only checked in 3 bags, which led investigators to believe that that 4th bag was disposed of in a trash can outside of the American Airlines terminal. It's assumed that the murder weapon was in that 4th bag.
OJ is able to make his 11:45 flight because this is before they have airport security and the TSA, and so the flight leaves on time, and not long after the flight departs, the bodies are discovered down on Bundy.
I used to run through airports. Now I fly through them.
5 days later, on November 17th, OJ was charged with the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. But when police went to arrest him, he had disappeared.
When did the blood appear in the Bronco?
Highway Charles. Yeah, I think I just saw OJ Simpson on the 5 freeway. He's heading north, and we looked at him, and he stared us down like he was dead. Hold on, I got a cop coming here right now. Okay, we'll put it out. Okay, bye.
These 2 young people didn't deserve to die, and they didn't deserve to die in that manner. I can take a few questions.
Did you have a tail on the suspect? Commander Gascon, didn't you have a tail on the suspect all the time? Were you watching him constantly? How
True.
did you lose him?
You asked a question. Would you like for me to answer?
As Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman lay dead in the entryway of Nicole's Bundy condo, Nicole's ex-husband, OJ Simpson, boarded a red-eye flight to Chicago, where he was set to play in a charity golf tournament the next day.
Did you fly on the evening of June 12th, 1994?
Yes, sir, I did.
When you first encountered Mr. Simpson, what, if anything, did you observe that he was doing?
Just looking out the window, just lost in thought.
How long did your conversation last with Mr.
Simpson? A minute or so. He had seemed like the old OJ that I always see here and there.
And the fact that he was so late on board, I was looking to see if he was sweating, and he looked absolutely normal.
Simpson checked into the O'Hare Plaza Hotel, which is now a Holiday Inn. The football star was friendly with the night clerk, even joking around before mentioning that he was tired and needed sleep. Back in LA, police officers, along with Detective Mark Furman, went over to Simpson's house to inform him of his ex-wife's death. It's LAPD policy to immediately inform the next of kin when a celebrity is involved. When they arrived, they discovered a trail of blood leading from Simpson's white Bronco to the front door, as well as a bloody glove matching the one found at the crime scene.
Now, at some point, did you leave the location of 875 South Bundy?
Yes, we did. Well, I asked Officer Risky, I said, do you know the numbers for the Rockingham location?
And did he respond to you?
He said 360 north. All 4 of us exited the vehicle and stood around the Ashford gate. And I can't remember if it was Van Adder or Lang started ringing the buzzer at the gate. I jumped the wall just to the left or east of the Ashford gate. I continued walking down the path, and when I got approximately 15 or 20 feet away, I saw a dark object. I continued to walk forward towards that object. At some point, I could tell that it was a glove.
Has anyone, to your knowledge, seen that glove there before your arrival?
Not to my knowledge.
Sleep, however, was short-lived for Simpson. Detective Ronald Phillips called Simpson in his Chicago hotel room, breaking the news that his ex-wife had been killed.
Chicago O'Hare Plaza.
OJ Simpson, please.
One moment.
Hello? Is this OJ Simpson?
Yeah, who's this?
I have some bad news. Your ex-wife, Nicole Simpson, has been killed.
Oh my God. Nicole has been killed? Oh my God, is she dead?
Yes. I'm so sorry, Mr. Simpson.
What is it?
You didn't ask how she died.
Simpson didn't ask how she was killed, when she was killed, or who killed her.
Where and when? What? I didn't know.
He didn't even ask where she was killed. Questions you'd think you'd ask if the mother of your children was murdered while she was with your children. The discovery of the body set in motion the most famous car chase of all time and a televised trial that riveted a nation and divided us along racial lines.
Something really kind of happened that night that started my downfall as I think about it, but I prefer not to talk about it here.
What happened?
Right now. I really don't want to talk about it here. I really don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Checking out of the O'Hare Plaza Hotel, Simpson made a big deal about needing a Band-Aid for his bloody finger. He'd been so stunned by the news of his ex-wife being murdered, he broke a glass in his hotel room, cutting his finger in the process.
I didn't really throw a glass. I just was, and when I was putting it down, it just smashed. you know.
Simpson was rude and overbearing at the front desk, but on the flight back to LA, the Football Hall of Famer was a consummate celebrity, even signing a cocktail napkin for a fan. His seatmate, Mark Partridge, made an unfortunate remark to Simpson when the sports star sat down next to him.
It seemed that Mr. Simpson was visibly upset about something. Early in the flight, I said something to him like, "Tough way to start a Monday." And at that point, he said, a friend was dead. During that conversation, he told me it was his ex-wife. He said he loved her. He said he was in shock. He didn't know what to think. He said family or friends were blaming him. I asked if it was an accident. He said no.
The news that Simpson was at the center of a sordid tragedy snuck up on the public quietly, but then exploded quickly. Everyone had an opinion and no one could turn away.
It was hard to believe that it seemed so easy listening to TV that week that it was that easy for people to believe that I could kill two people.
I've never personally shaken hands with a murderer.
I thought that my whole life meant something.
When Simpson arrived back at Rockingham, he was briefly handcuffed before being taken to the Parker Center, police headquarters in downtown LA. Nicknamed the Glass House, the Parker Center was demolished in 2019. The building was perhaps best known as the backdrop for the TV show Dragnet.
I carry a badge.
Simpson was questioned for 3.5 hours.
Interview room in Parker Center. The date is June the 13th, 1994, and we're here with OJ Simpson.
What do you think happened? I have no idea what happened. I don't know how, why, or what. You guys haven't told me anything.
You haven't had any problems with her lately, have you, OJ?
I always have problems with her. That's our relationship. It's been a common relationship.
OJ, are you a suspect? David, I told you before he wasn't going to say anything. I know you got to ask the question, but give us a break here.
30 miles away in suburban Agoura, California, family and friends also gathered today at funeral services for Goldman, a 25-year-old waiter and model.
I thought it was over here.
Ronald Lyle Goldman.
You found him?
1968 to 1994.
Here it is.
I was here one time and there was a note on the grave. It looked like it was from Kim Goldman. It said, I miss you every day.
Nicole and Ron were buried in separate funerals on June 16th. Ron was buried here at Pierce Brothers Valley Oaks Memorial Park in Westlake Village. The cemetery is only a couple of miles from the site where basketball great Kobe Bryant died when his helicopter crashed into a hillside on January 26, 2020. When Simpson attended Nicole's funeral, he was already a suspect. He arrived hand in hand with his and Nicole's children, 6-year-old Justin and 9-year-old Sydney. Nicole's funeral was held here at St. Martin's of Tours in Brentwood.
Allegedly, OJ leaned over Nicole's body and kissed her on the forehead and said, "I'm so sorry, Nicole."
And let's get right to it. Our top story at 4 o'clock, funeral services for the victims of a double murder. Both ceremonies were emotional farewells this afternoon.
Others hugged outside the church, embraced. Again, Simpson friend Al Cowling seemingly in charge. OJ himself with dark sunglasses on, again with his children. He spoke briefly to the priest. Moments later, with presidential-like security guards jogging by the side of his limo, the funeral procession sped off to the cemetery.
The procession snaked its way down the 405 to Lake Forest in Orange County, the same freeway Simpson would take the next day during the Bronco chase. In October of 2022, I took the OJ Simpson tour with OJ expert and tour guide Adam Papagang. I called Adam up last week for some insight on Nicole's funeral. We decided to head down to Nicole's gravesite for the afternoon. It's about an hour and a half drive from LA. On our way down, we pulled over and picked some flowers for Nicole. I'd never been there, and I was curious to see where one of the world's most famous murder victims was buried.
Or you know what, it's over here near this building. I believe it's behind this thing right there. And then the third time I tried to come here was during the pandemic. while I was watching Real Housewives of Orange County.
Okay.
Like, we're not too far from Coto de Casa and like where a lot of them live was down here. Anyway, I tried to go and it was closed, but it's kind of funny that, like, you know, they say like it's like OJ trial, first reality show, whatever. I think Nicole would have been a great housewife on Real Housewives of OC.
She probably would have been.
She probably would have been. She would have been a great. Right. I met OJ when I was 18. Right. Like, you can just imagine the whole thing. And it's sort of ironic that she ended up here in this like fake environment where they all live. Anyway, her fate was kind of always going to be this. Right. Just this person people talk about and speculate about.
It's a prettier cemetery than I thought it was going to be from the photos. It looked kind of run down.
What else is cool buried here?
Oh, let's see. Yeah, that's the only person they have listed on here. Here we are.
Sorry, Nicole.
I mean, one of the most famous murder victims of all time.
Yeah.
Then you go, there's all these other people here. Like, there are probably other people in the cemetery who were murdered by their husbands.
Right.
Like, it's really not that uncommon.
Nope.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Watch 48 Hours.
Yeah. Oh, and I do.
It's always one spouse kills the other one.
Now here's a rundown of what is transpiring legally.
On June 17th, the day after Ron and Nicole's funerals, detectives charged Simpson with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances. Prosecutors announced they might even seek the death penalty, which must have freaked Simpson out.
In this case, again, upon conviction, the death penalty could be used.
Simpson's lawyer, Robert Shapiro, who had been Eric Menendez's lawyer for a short time, was notified by the LAPD that Simpson would have to turn himself in later that day.
There was some type of arrangement with defense counsel that the police had trusted defense counsel to surrender Mr. Simpson, and that has not happened. And not only is this an embarrassment for the police, but right now they've tried so hard to be careful in their investigation, and they're missing the most important thing, the defendant.
I arranged the surrender of Eric Menendez from Israel on a similar basis. We are all shocked by this sudden turn of events.
On the morning of the chase, OJ hid out at his friend Robert Kardashian's house here in Encino.
Now I would like to introduce to you Mr. Robert Kardashian, who is one of Mr. Simpson's closest and dearest friends.
Robert Kardashian lived here with his new wife after he left Kris Jenner. And, you know, Kim and Khloe and Kourtney, this is where they stayed. I mean, they were right, the Kardashian family, they were right in the middle of the whole OJ fiasco.
OJ was Uncle OJ to us. Nicole was Aunt Nicole.
Years after his death, Kardashian was accused of removing evidence from Rockingham.
How close were Kardashian and Simpson? Look at this video taken the day after Simpson's wife Nicole and her friend were found stabbed to death. It shows Kardashian carrying Simpson's expensive Louis Vuitton garment bag. He puts it in his car and drives away. Now Kim Kardashian is shedding light on the mystery. In an interview in the new GQ magazine, Kim says she actually saw the contents of the bag. I remember I went through it. The news was like, where is this Louis Vuitton bag? And I'm like, oh, it's upstairs. So what does she say she found? Just toiletries and clothes and golf clothes. Just random stuff. I'm pretty sure it's still probably in my dad's storage.
Years later, Shapiro cast doubt on his friend's innocence.
I asked you if you yourself doubt OJ Simpson's innocence.
I have doubts.
The police delayed Simpson's surrender until noon to allow him to be seen by a mental health specialist, as he was showing signs of suicidal depression. He had updated his will, called his mother and children, and written 3 sealed letters. One to his children, one to his mother, and one to the public. More than 1,000 reporters waited for Simpson's perp walk at the police station, but he never arrived.
And OJ Simpson will be brought here to Parkhurst Center.
Sometime later in the morning, I got a call from the commander of Los Angeles Police Department saying we must now announce that OJ Simpson is a fugitive. Where is he? I gave him the address and directions to the home in the San Fernando Valley. He said he would be sending up a black and white unit immediately. The police arrived about 15 minutes later, came into the home. It was at that time that we discovered for the first time that OJ was not present.
Before the police could arrive, OJ left in his white Bronco with his friend and former teammate Al Cowlings.
Mr. Simpson has not appeared. The Los Angeles Police Department right now is actively searching for Mr. Simpson. Thank you very much, and we appreciate your patience.
That's Commander David Gascon from the Los Angeles Police Department with one of the most stunning announcements you're ever going to hear on live television. OJ Simpson, one of this country's best-known personalities, is a suspect in a double homicide, a terribly gruesome crime, and he is at large tonight. There is now a statewide manhunt underway for OJ Simpson in California.
Shoot of Mr. Simpson, who they hope he says to have in custody soon, but as of the moment, he is a wanted murder suspect.
Police can't find him at this hour. The former football...
Simpson is not inside. Despite what people running around saying, O.J. Simpson is not here.
So the question so many people are asking, and perhaps this needs to be addressed to the LAPD, and it already has, is how can this possibly happen? The entire world is focused on this man. Is there any way to answer that?
I can't.
Shapiro stepped aside so that Kardashian could read what is now known as the suicide letter, live on TV and in front of the world's press.
Everyone understand, I had nothing to do with Nicole's murder. I loved her, always have, and always will. If we had a problem, it's because I loved her so much. I think of my life and feel I've done most of the right things. So why do I end up like this? I can't go on. No matter what the outcome, people will look and point. Please think of the real OJ and not this lost person.
Simpson signed the letter with a smiley face using the O in OJ. Who signs a suicide letter with a smiley face?
I was in so much pain, I just wanted it to stop. I didn't think I could bear it, and I kept saying, I can't be locked in a cell right now.
Simpson was nowhere to be found. The most watched man in the world had vanished right before our very eyes. Simpson had snuck out of Kardashian's home with the help of Cowlings, his most trusted friend. The former teammates disappeared into the hills of Encino before joining the 405, where they would be one car out of thousands. It's assumed by many that it was Simpson's white Bronco that captivated the nation that day. But at the time of the chase, Simpson's Bronco had been impounded by the LAPD. It was Cowlings' 1993 white Bronco. He worshipped Simpson so much, he bought the identical car. Years after the whole Simpson saga, Simpson pretended to sell Broncos in a long-forgotten hidden camera show.
It's a terrible car, man. It's a Bronco. A car that I personally made famous. Al Cowlings was driving this thing. If we wanted to get away, it was easier to get away. I can guarantee you the car has escapability. I mean, if you ever get into some trouble, you got to get away.
If I went to a used car lot and I saw OJ Simpson working there, I'd not buy a car.
I actually sold the worst used car ever. I mean, this was a Bronco with a bullet hole in it and seats with holes in it. Watch this. You see that truck right there?
Which one, that Chevrolet?
Yeah, there's a camera in that truck.
Oh, okay.
You see right there? You've just been juiced.
Are you serious?
Cowlings' Bronco collected dust in parking space 144 for 17 years in the nondescript parking garage of the Westward condos in LA. Eventually, the Bronco found its way to the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas before finding a home with the Alcatraz East Crime Museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, home of Dollywood.
So, if that's not Americana, I don't know what is. The country music theme park and the vehicle two former athletes used to escape justice on live television. If you get up early enough, you can see them both on the same day. Pretty incredible stuff.
It's been said that after the limo JFK was shot in, the white Bronco is the second most viewed car in American history.
As OJ tells it, he was so distraught, and a doctor had given him some pills, and he has no memory of the funeral or anything like that, which is why he wanted to come back here for the car chase. This is actually when OJ disappears before the manhunt starts. OJ and AC came down here in the white Bronco for OJ to pay his respects at Nicole's grave one last time. Apparently, OJ was going to kill himself here or just wanted to pay his respects or whatever.
He does have a gun with him, and oftentimes these domestic violence things do end murder-suicide. But he also had $8,700 in cash and a passport and a disguise. So he could have been just planning on fleeing to Mexico with his best friend AC.
Please, I'm just gonna go with Nicole. That's all I'm gonna do. That's all I'm trying to do.
Think about everybody else, all right?
I couldn't do it on a freeway. I couldn't do it in a field. I want to do it at her grave. I want to do it at my house.
The question remains to this day, did Simpson really plan on killing himself, or was it a ploy for public sympathy? When Simpson and Cowlings pulled up to the cemetery, they found a squad car stationed at the front gate, so they drove on.
The chase kind of started here, and we're not too far from the El Toro Y, which is the 5405 interchange. That's where the chase officially started.
911, what are you reporting? This is AC. I have OJ in the car. Right now, we are okay. He's still alive, but he got a gun to his head.
At first, there's only one news helicopter covering the story, but by the end of the chase, 21 news helicopters, 95 million people watch it live around the world. It becomes this international news event. And if you have to point to one factor of why this became such a big story, it's the car chase. That is the greatest television premiere of all time. Everyone's watching the NBA playoffs.
The series was tied up 2 games apiece heading into the contest.
It gets interrupted with this unprecedented event, sets the tone for the whole trial, and even foreshadows OJ getting away with it all in the end.
It's a very serious situation here, and I can tell you one that is hard to believe with my own eyes.
When live footage of the chase swept America's TV screens that June of '94, my mom was cooking dinner in the kitchen of our family home in Arlington, Texas, and I was sat in front of the TV in the living room. I'd never seen anything like it, and neither had anyone else.
Reuters is reporting that the police tracked O.J. Simpson through his cellular phone.
Pat, we're just now crossing the 605.
But again, O.J. appears to be holding a gun to his head.
O.J. Simpson is in this vehicle. One report says he has a gun pointed to his head, says he will not be taken alive, and wants to be taken to see his mother.
Detective Tom Lang reached Simpson on his cell phone and tried to convince him to get rid of his gun.
Don't do this.
All I did was love Nicole. All I did was love her.
Just throw it out the window. And nobody's gonna get hurt.
I'm the only one that deserves.
No, you don't deserve that.
Get hurt.
You do not deserve to get hurt.
I'll call you back in a minute, sweetheart. I'm doing an interview.
So this is basically where OJ was sitting during the low-speed chase. One of the biggest live news events in television history was unfolding before my 14-year-old eyes, and I sat mesmerized, trying to process the fact that this wasn't a movie, it was real life. Somewhere, just a 24-hour drive away, was a city where the lines between movies and real life blurred. And not just the warm and beautiful, but the cold and tragic.
But look at the people standing on the freeway there, waiting.
The Ford Bronco right
A number of people standing on the side of the road, just the curious and also well-wishers. We watch people wave and blow kisses as Mr. Simpson drives by.
It's about all the goodwill I get around here.
Well, just give yourself up, man. Just stop. Please stop. In Jesus' name, just stop, man.
It appears now as though he is getting, as I recall, there are 2 lanes on the Sunset Boulevard off-ramp. He is in one of them, and that's the lane he would be using. Looks like he's getting off there.
Okay, Hal, it looks like he is getting off at the off-ramp at Sunset.
Right. Okay.
Getting off, he's on the off-ramp now, coming up the off-ramp at Sunset. Lots of people at the overpass at Sunset and making a left turn. The intersection's free, and he's clear, and now making his left turn westbound on Sunset.
All right.
Staying ahead of it, we're going to his mansion, believing that he's going there, but it was an amazing situation on that overpass there. There were people running around on top of there. I don't know how he's going to be able to drive through all those people. All along Sunset Boulevard, there are people stopped as well ahead of the chase.
We are witnessing tonight a modern tragedy and drama of Shakespearean proportion being played out live on television.
Coming or going on a business trip, you've got no time to waste.
I'm Tom Brokaw in New York. You're looking at a Ford Bronco, and O.J. Simpson is almost back home.
They pulled me in my driveway.
I know, I see you. Please, toss the gun. Juice, come on, just toss it. It's okay. Hey, no. Hey, man, no. Juice.
We have a standoff of sorts here where the police have not been able to act in any way.
I thought we believe that to be Al Cowlings. Holding his hand up, his palm up, perhaps toward the police officers behind him, pointing toward the front door to O.J. Simpson's home, but...
As you can see, obviously they're negotiating and talking
Two police officers.
Two police officers that are in the house.
Property there.
Okay, here's I believe a man is pleading to negotiate with people here, the police obviously, and it's obviously very stressful down there from these pictures, as you can see. A very delicate situation taking place as we watch here.
Now, we do know that there was at least one gun in that car.
The standoff at Simpson's Rockingham estate lasted over an hour.
They are trying to put a phone call, perhaps, from OJ through to his mother. They're trying to arrange that right now.
Family members, some Simpson family members, obviously distraught, pushing and shoving with members of the media who were trying to cover the story. They were not allowed past the crime tape initially, but they got in a few minutes later. There's another distraught neighbor.
When we last heard from Mr. Shapiro, it was at a news conference, and his opening comment was, OJ, please surrender.
City News Service wire that says that OJ Simpson has been arrested in his driveway.
Simpson waited until nightfall to emerge from the Bronco.
My luck sure had changed. I was kissing concrete instead of women.
Just 2 years after the riots of '92, helicopter shots of chaotic LA streets were beamed across the country once again as the nation watched anxiously, hoping to avoid a repeat of those horrific scenes we had yet to process.
Authorities have repeatedly told us that he will be taken to the Los Angeles County Men's Jail. We are going to leave you now with a day that you have all been able to share in, for better or for worse. OJ Simpson in police custody in Los Angeles, 2 counts of murder.
Hold it.
The trial would become the latest spectacle to split the country in two. Everybody, everywhere was part of the conversation.
So don't start talking about who's
making the bucks. Guys, let's bring it back home. Let's bring it back home.
There's lots and lots of media.
The Simpson case baffled and intrigued the nation from its outset.
You know, what's the message? That you get a stiff fine if you kill somebody.
That's right.
Opinions were formed, in some cases live on TV, and in many cases as a result of the sensationalism of live TV and its coverage of the racial tensions it was trying to explain.
The OJ Simpson murder trial. The verdict returns in a moment.
Few believed OJ was innocent, but some who thought he was guilty hoped for his victory over the LAPD, which many viewed as a corrupt institution that preyed on minorities. They weren't wrong.
Beverly Hills emergency.
Yes, police.
What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people...
No.
Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
Is the person still there?
What happened? We have units around. What happened? Who shot who?
I don't hear anything.
You came home and found who shot?
My mom and my dad.
Your mom and dad?
My mom and my dad.
Okay, we're on our way over there with an ambulance.
Okay, I gotta go.
This was the Menendez family home, where Lyle and Eric Menendez killed their parents, Jose and Kitty. It was a crime that shocked the nation.
People in this quiet, exclusive neighborhood remained surprised at the murders.
In a bizarre, only in Hollywood twist, a baby shower was thrown for Nicole Simpson in this house before the Menendez family moved in. By June of 1994, the Beverly Hills brothers had been in custody for over 4 years. On Friday, June 17, 1994, Eric Menendez was ordered to scrub down a neighboring cell. On his hands and knees, Eric cleaned while watching the Bronco chase live on TV, just like everyone else. But unlike everyone else, Eric was about to get a front row seat to the aftermath of the chase, because at 10:30 that night, a group of deputies delivered Simpson to the spotless empty cell next to Eric's. After the Bronco chase, Simpson was arrested and brought here to the LA County Jail. The first night was rough, and according to Eric, Simpson could be heard crying and moaning all night. And by Saturday morning, the weight of his ex-wife's death consumed a despondent Simpson. Over the next few weeks, Eric explained to Simpson the ins and outs of life behind bars. Simpson confided in Eric that he was worried that his reputation had been tarnished. Eric would later say that Simpson was treated like royalty. deputies would stop by to ask for the football star's autograph. So this is my OJ Simpson autograph. A friend of mine got it for me for my birthday this past year, and I just think it's so crazy because he signed a picture of the Bronco chase. And we all know that even though you can't see it in the photo, he's holding a gun to his head in the backseat. I just think it's so crazy, so OJ. And Simpson dined on whatever the officers ate, like roast beef, pork chops, and burritos. Guards let him use his cell phone whenever he wanted, and left his cell doors open most of the time. Everyone there was in awe of Simpson. After a week, Eric was moved to a different cell, and he never saw Simpson again. Court TV had a smash hit by airing the Menendez brothers' trial live on TV. And as it turned out, the brothers' trial was just the warm-up act. 2 days later, Simpson pled.
Absolutely 100% not guilty.
Judge Lance Ito was assigned to the case. Like many of his decisions, Ito allowing cameras in the courtroom was controversial. He faced criticism for seeming to enjoy the press and for allowing too many sidebars and recesses.
It's been a bad day today.
During the trial, it came to light that Ito's wife had been Detective Mark Furman's superior officer. Furman would go on to become the most controversial figure at the trial.
And you say on your oath that you have not addressed any black person as a or spoken about black people as in the past 10 years, Detective Furman.
That's what I'm saying, sir.
Anything out of a mouth for the first 5 or 6 sentences is a lie.
And the first thought is, okay, this is OJ Simpson's ex-wife. He's a big celebrity. We should tell him about this in person so he doesn't have to hear about it on the news. How do we get a hold of him? Well, Mark Furman, the racist LAPD cop, is there. He's like, oh, I've actually been to OJ's house in 1985 on a domestic violence call. I'll take you guys up there right now. There's no answer at the door, so Furman hops over the fence. He's unsupervised for 13 minutes, so that's maybe when he has time to plant evidence. Now, Furman is, of course, the big curveball at the end of the trial. The audio tapes of him practicing dialogue for a script he's writing, where he's giving an example of how cops really talk.
We started to choke because a bunch of have a bunch of these organizations in the South End, and because all are choked out and killed 12 in 10 years.
Leave that old station, and it's got the smell of that have been beaten and killed in there for years.
He had lied under oath, he had committed perjury, and so now when they put him on the stand again, he has to plead the Fifth Amendment to prevent from incriminating himself. And when you do that, it's not selective, it's for anything they ask you. So they're like, have you ever planted evidence before? I plead the Fifth. Have you ever used the N-word before? I plead the Fifth. And the jury's like, okay, obviously he's lying, this is a big cover-up, we have to let OJ go.
Ron and Nicole were butchered. Do any of you believe otherwise? This is not now the Furman trial. Are we all fools? Do they take us all for morons?
District Attorney Gil Garcetti, father of former Mayor Eric Garcetti, elected to file charges in downtown LA as opposed to Santa Monica, the jurisdiction where the crimes took place.
If you have any questions, I will attempt to address them, but it's going to be difficult.
The Los Angeles Superior Court then decided to hold the trial in downtown LA instead of the Santa Monica courthouse due to safety concerns stemming from the 1995 Northridge earthquake. These decisions may have ultimately affected the outcome of the criminal trial. Here in Santa Monica, where the civil trial would ultimately take place, the jury pool was educated, high income, and more likely to accept the validity of the DNA testing. In LA, the jury pool was less educated, lower income, receptive to claims of racially motivated fraud by the police, and contained more African Americans.
One of the strategies of the defense is they're trying to paint the LAPD as all these racist cops who frame black people. The LA riots had just happened, so there's recent precedents for police misconduct and not being handled well.
Come in here and trash the place.
You put your hand behind your back one more time like that, and I will hurt you.
Hey, what kind of statement are you making?
America has a problem.
Our people have suffered.
So many people's lives go up in flames.
Civil rights, but the right to be a human being, and it has been justified by a jury, shows us that we can't get justice in America. How many more Bundy Kings does it have to be? How many more Natasha Harlem does it have to be?
Groups of youths are on the streets in South Central Los Angeles. There are reports that they are throwing rocks and bottles.
Let's get the latest on the situation now and go to Newscopter 13.
Jim, you're looking at a live picture. There's been a mini riot at this location. Tom's liquor store has been looted at this point.
Racial tensions between the LAPD and the black community here in LA had been boiling over for generations before finally exploding in the summer of 1992 right here in the intersection of Normandy and Florence. This was the epicenter of the LA riots. The unrest began in South Central on April 29th after a jury acquitted the 4 police officers who beat Rodney King. It was the last straw for some in the black community who had felt targeted by the LAPD. The riots were on everybody's mind when on January 24th, 1995, the OJ Simpson murder trial opened here at the Criminal Courts Building in downtown LA. Other notable trials that have taken place here include the murder trials of Richard Ramirez the Night Stalker, Phil Spector, the Grim Sleeper serial killer, and Dr. Sleep himself, Conrad Murray, Michael Jackson's doctor. Relations weren't much better between prosecutor Christopher Darden and defense attorney Johnny Cochran.
The second voice that you heard sounded like the voice of a black man, is that correct?
Sustained. Sustained.
Of course not, I don't.
Wait!
But this statement about whether somebody sounds black or white is racist, and I resent it, and that's why I stood and objected. And I think it's totally improper. In America, at this time, in 1995, we have to hear this and endure this.
This is the witness's statement, and if the statement is racist, then he is the racist, not me. Okay? And clearly, I mean, but that's what you're suggesting, and that's what, you know, has created a lot of problems for my family and myself. Statements that you make about me and race, Mr. Cochran.
Well, you
and
stop
I would indicate to the
things.
court.
Wait. I'm going to take a recess right now because I'm so mad at both of you guys. I'm about to hold both of you in contempt. We'll take 15. If I see this conduct again from either of you two.
Fears grew that race riots similar to those in '92 would erupt across LA if Simpson was convicted. Back in 1994, most white people thought the former football star was guilty, while roughly the same proportion of black people thought Simpson was innocent.
These white people, excuse me, but that's the way I feel about this here situation, trying to set the brother up.
The racial gap in public opinion was one of the many elements in the case that showed race was as important as glove size and forensic evidence. Simpson's dream team was accused of playing the race card.
And the defense wants to squirm away from that fact by playing the race card.
She talks a lot about this idea of a race card, and we take personal umbrage to that.
Details on their field trip to OJ's home, where the majority African-American jury thought they got a glimpse of his life.
We took all of his white friends down, put all of his black people up.
If we had had a Latin jury, we would have had a picture of him in a sombrero. There would have been a mariachi band out front. We would have had a piñata at the upper staircase.
Simpson hired a team of high-profile defense lawyers, initially led by Robert Shapiro, and then subsequently by Johnny Cochran, who at that point was known for police brutality in civil rights cases. The team included noted defense attorney F. Lee Bailey, Robert Kardashian, and Alan Dershowitz. Simpson's dream team was so good that they managed to keep his confession away from the jurors. On November 13, 1994, former NFL player and pastor Rosie Greer visited Simpson in jail. Sergeant Jeff Stewart, a guard at the jail, overheard Simpson confess to Greer. While Simpson and Greer chatted by phone in a one-man visitation room separated by thick glass, Stewart sat at his desk with his back to Greer 3 feet away. Suddenly, Stewart heard this thwacking sound of a phone slamming, and then Simpson shouted,
"I didn't mean to do it. I'm sorry."
This concludes our broadcast day.
Greer pleaded with Simpson to come clean and tell somebody. Later that evening, supervisors told Stewart that Simpson was cursing him while being escorted back to his cell, ranting about a deputy falsely claiming to have heard his confession. Because Stewart hadn't told anybody, he figured Simpson was just trying to cover his tracks. Ida ultimately ruled that the conversation was inadmissible, protected because of clergy penitent privilege.
I'm here for you!
The jury of 8 women and 4 men, 7 black, 4 white, and 1 Hispanic, never got to hear this evidence. Over the course of the trial, 10 were dismissed for any number of reasons, and by the end of the trial, only 4 of the original jurors remained. Lead prosecutor Marsha Clark was convinced that the more women she could get on the jury, the better chances for conviction. She believed that women would side with a victim of domestic violence.
We want a verdict that's based on the evidence. We want a fair and just verdict.
Clark had to learn the hard way that race issues and racial solidarity will often trump gender issues.
It's not about race. I happen to be black. He happens to be black. These men happen to be white. What difference does that make? We're all still Americans.
The jury chose to make a statement against racism rather than one against domestic violence.
African American women had been some of my best jurors on previous cases, even when the defendant was an African American. There was just a way, an easy way I had, that I could talk to them.
Trial simulations.
The one you never saw on camera.
Marcia was not received positively.
Marcia Clark, every black woman, bitch.
When they had the mock jury, the mock trial, and some of the comments came back about you, about maybe being really hard or tough, what did you think when you heard some of that? I was very surprised. The balance of them said good things. So, you know, the media takes one kernel and blows it up into a huge bowl of popcorn.
No matter what you do, Judge, you will be criticized because there is an appearance created, and it's a no-win situation.
That's pretty much par for every day, isn't it?
Yes, I agree.
Clark herself endured an unbelievable amount of sexism and unwarranted scrutiny during the trial. It didn't matter how many hours Clark spent prepping for the case. As soon as she walked into the courtroom, all eyes were on her hair.
Body, face, or your triple threat.
The media examined her looks the way the jury examined the case.
This hairstyle, when she straightened her curly hair, got better reviews.
It's short, it's sassy, it's sophisticated.
And it wasn't just a sexist media. The defense was sexist.
We certainly aren't going to yell at Your Honor and become hysterical. We would,
I
just
object
point
to
out.
that characterization,
Okay,
Your Honor. That kind of personal attack is very improper and inappropriate. The court knows that it was simply advocacy. I'm not yelling at anyone. And for Mr. Cochran to make that kind of sexist remark, hysterical, I take great umbrage at it. And I think the court should not countenance that kind of behavior.
I don't.
She finished?
During the trial, Clark was in the middle of a bitter custody dispute with her ex-husband. On February 24th, 1995, Judge Ito scheduled court to run late to hear from Simpson's maid. Clark couldn't do it. She had to pick up her children from her ex or risk losing custody.
I'm not arguing with the court's authority to do that, but, Your Honor, I guess I can't be here. And if the court had informed me...
Ms. Clark, I'm sorry. I apologize to you. I had forgotten that problem.
It was Clark against the poor Salvadorian maid who wanted nothing more than to go back to El Salvador the following morning.
Good evening.
That I wanted to leave. I don't want to be here any longer. All these reporters have destroyed my life.
Simpson's maid wasn't the only reluctant celebrity to come out of the trial. The trial made overnight sensations of some unlikely individuals, many who are still recognizable today.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've been waiting for. Cato Kalin.
Some, like OJ's housemate Cato Kalin, was less reluctant to cash in on his newfound fame. The public loved Cato, and Cato loved the public.
You a little bit nervous today?
Feel great. He appeared in a number of reality TV shows, including Celebrity Boot Camp, Give Me My Reality Show, and Celebrity Big Brother, just to name a few.
You ever taken an acting class? Have you taken an acting class?
My show is called Cato Kalin's 16th Minute. I give people with 50 minutes of fame an extra minute of fame.
He also released a line of pajama wear called Cato's Potatoes for the couch potato lifestyle.
I forgot to turn off the jacuzzi. My opinion is, I think he's guilty. Can I prove it? Absolutely not.
In the mid-'80s, soap operas were a huge staple of television.
This case is a circus, and they've made it a circus.
When the trial began, networks received hate mail for interrupting people's soaps for the trial.
Bitch.
But all the people who watched soaps got addicted to the trial and were upset when it ended.
This is a blockbuster. This is a bombshell. This is perhaps the biggest thing that's happened in any case in this country in this decade.
Clark later said that people would come up to her on the street after the trial ended and say, "God, I loved your show." Like all good shows, it ended too soon for some. For others, the end couldn't come soon enough.
We all wanted to believe that our image of him was right. And we all know that we never knew him exactly, but we kind of felt like we did. It's really kind of hard to have to believe that the man we saw in the movies and the commercials could do this. And the fact that he did doesn't mean he wasn't a great football player. It doesn't mean he never did a good thing in his life. Nothing takes that away. It's still here. It'll always be here. But so will the fact that he committed these murders. And even though it's a hard thing, still it cannot mean that you let a guilty person go free. He had strengths and he had weaknesses. And it's his weakness that brought us here today. And it's his weakness, that's why we're here, and Ron and Nicole are not. Ron and Nicole, they're speaking to you. They're speaking to you.
Hello? It's 325 Gretna Green. He's back. Please. Okay, what does he look like? He's OJ Simpson. I think you know his record. Can you just take somebody over here? Okay, what is he doing there? He's just drove up again. He's drove me over. Wait a minute, what kind of car is he in? He's in a white Bronco. But first of all, he broke the back door down to get in. Okay, wait a minute, what's your name? Nicole Simpson. Okay, is he the sportscaster or whatever? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Wait a minute, we're in the police. What is he doing? Is he threatening you? He's fucking going nuts. Okay, has he threatened you in any way, or is he just harassing you? You're going to hear him in a minute. He's about to get in again.
Simpson declined to take the stand, but Judge Ito allowed Simpson to make a statement directly to the jury.
A lot more it seems than Ms. Clark has of their integrity, and that they will find, as the record stands now, that I did not, could not, and would not have committed this crime. I have 4 kids, 2 kids I haven't seen in a year.
Give me a big hug. Come on, give me a big one, big squeeze.
He hasn't seen his kids in a year. He's seen at least 2. I will never see my son again.
It's still OJ Simpson. It's no disguise. It's no disguise. It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
That you will conscientiously consider and weigh all the evidence, apply the law as I have instructed you, and reach a just verdict regardless of the consequences.
Stunning just about everyone, the jury reached its verdict after 4 hours of deliberations. The verdicts were sealed overnight and read at 10 a.m. the next day.
On this shift, we'll take you right through the verdict.
The jury in the OJ Simpson case has reached a verdict.
Mr. Simpson has now come back to the courtroom.
I was in my high school drama class, and our drama teacher wheeled in a TV so we could watch it live, because she said it was history in the making. And everyone was so shocked by the verdict, but keep in mind, I went to a mostly all-white school in Arlington, Texas. So, of course, everybody was shocked. And it wasn't until later you start studying what was going on just underneath the surface. President Bill Clinton, who allegedly played golf with Simpson 3 weeks before the murders, was briefed on security measures if rioting were to occur nationwide.
The only people who heard all the evidence were the people who were sitting in the jury box. And in terms of the way Americans see the world differently generally based on their race, that troubles me. I think the only answer to that is for us to spend more time listening to each other and try to put ourselves in each other's shoes and understand why we see the world in different ways, and keep trying to overcome that.
The LAPD had more than 100 police officers on horseback surrounding the perimeter of the criminal courts building.
All right, Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury?
At 10:07 a.m. on Tuesday, October 3rd, 1995, the verdict was read out loud on live TV to more than 100 million viewers.
It is shortly before noon Chicago time, and history is in the making. By the time you all see this, you will already know the OJ verdict.
We, the jury in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information.
defendant having been acquitted of both charges, he is ordered transported to an appropriate Sheriff's facility and released forthwith. All right, we'll stand in recess.
Oh my word.
I think he was shocked. He was definitely stunned. I mean, you could look at his face and see it. Known him my entire life. I know that, like, he was floored that that was the verdict.
Coffin's fooled the mindless mass.
Everybody that I came in contact with at the jail told me I was going home from the moment Mark Furman got off the stand. You may have did it, you may not have did it, but you're going home. The minute the jury knows these cops are lying, and they're lying, they do not convict if they think a police officer's lying.
I'd also like to thank the lawyers on our prosecution team. I am honored to have
Last June 13th, 94, was the worst nightmare of my life. This is the second. I will forever be proud of my son.
Back at Rockingham with helicopters overhead, Simpson returned home for the first time since his arrest over a year ago. He celebrated his freedom with family and friends. Here he is, hugging his best friend and driver of that Bronco, Al Cowlings.
Prosecution team, let the killers get away.
In a statement after your acquittal in the criminal trial, you vowed to dedicate your life and resources to find the, quote, real killers. People want to know, what are you doing, what have you done to find the, quote, unquote, real killers?
That's why they call me Juice, right here. They call me Juice, Brother Juice.
How's your investigation going?
Well, you know, we got information, but once again, we need help from LAPD.
You have people looking for the real killers. How do you explain that all the evidence so far points just to you? We have not seen one shred of evidence that points anywhere else. Right, well, then can you give us that evidence?
There have been alternate theories and suspects, but no plausible alternative theory has emerged since the trial. Probably the most popular theory is that Simpson's oldest son, Jason, committed the murders.
People are always like, oh, they had so much evidence, how'd they drop the ball? We really overestimate the LAPD, because from the Black Dahlia to Marilyn Monroe, Robert Kennedy, take your pick. There's a Notorious B.I.G. Yeah. There's a long history of these high-profile deaths happening in Los Angeles, and then they're poorly investigated, and there's lingering questions for decades, and everyone thinks it's a big conspiracy.
The three major factors that played a role in Simpson's acquittal, in my opinion, was the testimony of Detective Mark Furman.
If I never existed.
DNA, which you would have thought helped the prosecution's case.
They didn't do the DNA collection until a few days after the murders. DNA was kind of a new thing to be used in criminal trials. Really sloppy investigation, too. One of the criminologists, this was only the third crime scene she had ever been to. So it was just tons of mistakes were made. The jury really had no problem believing the defense. They later said that they didn't listen to any of the DNA evidence. They thought it was either planted or made up or just bogus science.
Our heiress leather license, style number 70263.
And of course, the bloody glove, which gave us the most iconic moment of the entire trial. It would also prove to be the prosecution's biggest misstep.
Here it is! No, Nicole and Ron, there is no justice. No, I've been arrested. You support the law when it's in your favor. I've been arrested too. You've been in jail. He bought a knife. He bought a knife. You idiots. He bought an effing knife. It's the why did you buy a knife?
In 1996, the parents of both Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman filed a civil suit against Simpson for wrongful death. This judge would not allow cameras in the courtroom.
OJ, you can't hide. We charge you with homicide. OJ, you're a murderer. OJ, you're a murderer. OJ, you're a murderer. You're a murderer.
The jury was not sequestered, the defense was prohibited from alleging racism by the LAPD, additional evidence of domestic violence was presented, and over 30 pre-94 photos of Simpson wearing Bruno Magli shoes were shown. The very shoe Simpson said he never owned. The very shoe that made the shoe prints leading from the crime scene to the back alley.
If Bruno Magli makes shoes that look like the shoes they had in court that's involved in this case, I would have never worn those ugly-ass shoes.
This time, Simpson testified, but he lied several times on the stand, but it didn't matter. Ultimately, the jury found him liable for the murders and awarded Nicole and Ron's family $33.5 million. Guilty! Simpson then filed for bankruptcy and relocated to Florida in order to protect his pension from being seized. The once football great couldn't stay out of trouble even in Florida.
Okay. Simpson being arrested for road rage. What are you going to do? Kill me and my kids?
He looks forward to fighting these charges, proving his innocence.
I cut you off. What do you mean? It was like no traffic on the street.
The defendant is not guilty.
In 2001, the FBI raided Simpson's house investigating ecstasy smuggling. Another time, Simpson called 911 on his girlfriend, Nicole lookalike Christy Brody, who he accused of attacking him. No charges were filed.
You beat up? Nah, look at me, do I look beat up?
Later that same year, Brody called 911 on Simpson, who she said broke into her condo. Again, no charges were filed. Simpson would spend the next few years roaming aimlessly through a bleak media landscape, searching for the high of his glory days. And a lot of the time, it was really embarrassing.
But the availability of women now is more than it's ever been in my life.
I've never personally shaken hands with a murderer. It's good to see you.
Thank you, very nice.
Doesn't that hurt your feelings?
No.
And uncomfortable to watch.
I mourn, and I'm still mourning for the rest of my life. I'll mourn, but I should have the right to go outside. I enjoy golf. I should have the right to play golf. It's God-given.
And sometimes funny.
Go away for a little while.
Go where? Whether they want me to go to Africa?
You certainly wouldn't want to go back to Africa because you've tried to step away, if you will, from your quote-unquote blackness. Are you capable of killing somebody?
You know, I would say no.
Asshole! Asshole!
You murdered Nicole. That's why we
I
don't
didn't
get
get along
along.
because Nicole was afraid you were going to have sex with me. That's why we didn't get along.
Hey, Twitter world, this is yours truly.
I think it was a bigger feat to break 2,000 yards in one season or slice 2 necks in one night.
I'm having a little trouble, Kevin, hearing you.
OJ Simpson is under arrest in Las Vegas
In connection with an alleged armed robbery.
A group of men led by Simpson broke into a room in the Palace Station Hotel and stole sports memorabilia at gunpoint.
You can steal my so don't let nobody out here.
Yeah, we were just robbed at gunpoint by OJ Simpson. Can you send the police here, please?
My glasses come on at 4 o'clock.
3 days later, on September 16, 2007, Simpson was arrested.
Basically, we're going to walk him in.
Straight to the right here. To the right. So how's everything going besides the obvious?
Good. And my dog just had, 7 puppies. Actually 9, but I think 7 lived just 2 days ago. So for the first time in like a month, I found my groceries. So I couldn't wait to get out there tomorrow. So it was a good day.
Simpson admitted taking the items, which he said had been stolen from him.
I didn't mean to steal anything from anybody, and I didn't know I was doing anything illegal. I thought I was confronting friends. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it.
At various points in the trial, familiar faces, the Goldman family and former prosecutor Marcia Clark.
Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, as follows. Count 1, conspiracy to commit a crime. Guilty. Count 2, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Guilty.
On October 3rd, 2008, exactly 13 years after he was acquitted of the murders of Ron and Nicole, Simpson was found guilty of 12 charges and sentenced to 33 years in prison.
Count 5, the first-degree kidnapping with use of a deadly weapon, a fixed term of 15 years. Count 6, first-degree kidnapping with use of a deadly weapon, a fixed term of 15 years with...
Some believe the 33 years was symbolic of the money he owed to the Brown and Goldman families.
Mr. Simpson, I do vote to grant parole when eligible, and that will conclude this hearing.
9 years later, Simpson was granted parole.
So obviously there's no end for this story. This is always going to be something that fascinates people. But on the other hand, this whole thing has become a very real part of American history. And it doesn't matter how many times you hear the story, at the end it's always like, wow, it's so crazy that all that happened. But it did, and it happened here. Any questions?
Wow! Ooh, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
Wow.
Shut the car off.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Questions. Let me get my bearings. That was. As Nicole and Ron's body lay on the other side of this wall, no one could have guessed that their end would be the beginning of a story that forever changed us. The OJ Simpson saga had everything. Celebrities, racism, sexism, domestic abuse, money, police corruption, and a car chase around LA. It was a perfect storm that ushered in cameras in the courtroom and 24-hour news. At the heart of the story, there are two victims, real people who often get left behind this wall. For those of you who believe Simpson is innocent, he'd agree with you. And for those who believe he got away with murder, remember, prison isn't always a physical space. This is Dead in Hollywood. Thanks for watching.
How do you think you will be remembered?
I mean, everybody is going to give their opinion. They're going to hypothesize he was guilty or he was purging his guilt. Whatever you want to take from it, I cannot control it. I'm done. Guys, I tried my best here. I'm done. No, we've done what I need to do.
Is it hard? Do you feel like spent?
No, it's just that this portion there, just, I love that girl. Yep, it hurts too. But it's what it is.
Did you see OJ?
Yeah.
Did you? Is he nervous? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think he's kind of, he has composure.
It's funny because I'm just so excited.
Dead in Hollywood.